Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. Let me start with a saying from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. So we have two wonderful, wonderful panelists today who haven't abandoned the task to just do whatever there is that needs to be done. And something from Mishnah Avot, it says, he used to say, this is Rabbi Sachs quoting from the Mishnah Avot, it's not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. So Rabbi Sachs is also saying something very beautiful, which I wanted to share. And we're going to call our panelists the Sea of Galilee, and as opposed to the Dead Sea. So Rabbi Sachs says, there is a fascinating feature of the geography of the land of Israel. It contains two seas, the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. The Sea of Galilee is full of life, fish, birds, vegetation. The Dead Sea, as its name implies, is not. They are fed by the same river, the Jordan. The difference is that the Sea of Galilee receives water at one end and gives out water at the other. The Dead Sea receives but does not give. The Jordan ends there. To receive but not to give is, in Jewish geography, as well as Jewish psychology, simply not life. To live is to give. And we have two givers here today. One of them, David Nathaniel, he's the president of our Babylonian community, and he's the vice president of our synagogue. He's one of the most effective people I and many others know. When he speaks, it's straight to the point. He gets things done quietly, very humbly. He embodies the spirit of doesn't matter who does what. It's all that matters is what gets done. And I couldn't think of anyone better. First of all, Rabbi Pinto said, invite David Nathaniel. and then I thought, well, why don't we give him a co-panelist? Here are two superstars. So our other star is Steve Maman, and you'll hear his bio later in the evening. But let's allow Françoise to show us what Rabbi Sachs has to say about what our panelists are going to talk about on the subject of Tzedakah, love as justice.
There are two kinds of mitzvot. There are the commands of self-restraint that hold us back from damaging the human or natural environment. And there are the positive commands of love for the world as God's work and for human beings as God's image. Of the second, the greatest is Tzedakah, love as justice, or sometimes translated as charity. The world is not always just or equitable or fair, and our task is to make it more so by helping those in need, sharing some of what we have with others. This act of sharing is more than just charity. It's a recognition of the fact that what we have from God. And one of the conditions of God's gifts is that we ourselves give. That way we too become like God, walking in his ways. The market creates wealth. That is its virtue. But it doesn't necessarily distribute it in such a way as to alleviate poverty, granting everyone the means of a dignified life. And that is its weakness. So there are two possibilities: either abandon the market or mitigate its negative effects. The first has been tried and failed. The second can be done in two ways: through the government by taxation and welfare, or through individuals. Governments can do much, but not everything. Tzedakah is Judaism's way of saying that each of us has a part to play. Every one of us must give. Tzedakah means both justice and charity, because we believe that they go hand in hand. Justice is impersonal, charity is personal. We call God Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. A king dispenses justice. A parent gives a child a gift out of love. And that is the meaning of tzedakah, an act that combines both justice and love. Giving to others is one of the most beautiful things we can do and one of the most creative. We create possibilities for other people. We soften some of the rough edges of the world. We help alleviate poverty and pain. We give God the sacrifice he most desires of us, that we honor his image in other people. Nothing more marks Judaism as a religion of love than its emphasis on tzedakah. We do not accept poverty, hunger, homelessness, or disease as God's will. To the contrary, God's will is that we heal these fractures in his world. As God feeds the hungry, so must we. As God heals the sick, so must we. We become good by doing good. We walk in God's ways by acting out of love.
On to you, Rabbi Maman Pinto, our spiritual leader.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Steve, to accept our invitation. David, Nathaniel, we look forward to hear what you have to say. I want to share with you just some ideas on the idea of tzedakah and what it represents, and maybe develop a little bit some of the ideas that Rabbi Sachs just spoke about. So we just heard from Rabbi Sachs that amongst what the mitzvot of tzedakah is the tzedakah is part of a positive commandment of love. It's a positive commandment of loving for the world as God's work and for human beings as God's image. Rabbi Sachs says that love as justice, or sometimes translated into charity. Now, we find something very interesting that Rabbi Sachs points out to, is that tzedakah could mean both things. It could mean justice, comes from the source of the word tzedek, meaning justice, or it could also mean charity. Tzedakah means both justice and charity because Rabbi Sachs says we believe that they go hand in hand. Justice is impersonal, charity is personal. This is what Rabbi Sachs says. But I want to give you my take on the different translation of tzedek and tzedakah. I think that the word tzedek as being justice puts more the emphasis of doing the right thing, as doing something that is just. Not because we understand it or not because it's logical for us or not. It's just about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And then the idea of charity puts more the emphasis on the person himself, right? I own something, I have money, I have something that I could share, then I want to share it. I could decide whether I want to give charity, I want to share what good I have, or I don't want to share it. My personal decision to do that. As Rabbi Sachs puts it, the world is not always just or equitable or fair. Our task is to make it more so by helping those in need, sharing some of what we have with others, reminding us of our charitable role and duty towards our community and society. This is the tzedakah as being an act of charity. And tzedakah, as translated as justice, is, as Rabbi Sachs states, this act of sharing is more than just a charity. It's the recognition of of the fact that what we have from God, and on one of the conditions of God's gift is that we ourselves give, the way we too become like God, walking in his ways. Now, charity was, so in charity, in the word tzedakah, we find those two elements as being them something that is on a personal level, something that we choose to do, or something that comes from above, something that is something that is within the realm of justice, of what is the right thing to do. Now, charity was not always something that was an acceptable act among cultures and philosophies. This might come as a shock to you, and I want to demonstrate that in one short story or dialogue between that is brought down in the Talmud. In many cultures, the act of giving charity was even viewed as blasphemy. And you'll see that it's in a way going against the Creator, was a belief that was amongst many cultures and philosophies. And I want to share this Talmudic anecdote with you that is a dialogue between Rabbi Akiva and a Roman sage by the name of Tornosu Frofus. And I'll state a state from this Talmudic sages. It says as follows. The question of Tornosu Frofus that was asked to Rabbi Akiva. And this is how the question goes. If your God loves the poor, for what reason does he not support them himself? This was a legitimate question that this Roman sage asked Rabbi Akiva. If God, in other words, if God is so loves the poor, why doesn't he support them? Why does he even create such a reality that there's poor people in the world? So Rabbi Akiva said to him, he commands us to sustain the poor so that through them and the charity we give them, we will be saved from judgment. In other words, God has created the poor and he created the rich. And in order that the rich should kind of get a benefit or not be judged, God created somebody poor that we should support them. This is what Rabbi Akiva told him. So they should not fear any judgment. The Roman sage replied to Rabbi Akiva and says, on the contrary, it is this charity which condemns you. The Jewish people, because you give it, because you give charity, this is exactly the thing that will condemn you. And he says to him, I will illustrate this to you with a parable. A king who was angry with his slave and put him in prison in order that he should not be fed or given to drink. And one person went ahead and fed him and gave him a drink. If the king heard about this, says this sage, would he not be angry with that person? Why would that person that was put in prison by a king and asked, and the king gave an order not to feed him, why would someone go ahead and feed him? And you, after all, says this sage, are called slaves. As is stated, for the children of Israel are slaves to me. So if God decreed that a certain person should be impoverished, one who gives him charity defies the will of God, says the Roman sage to Rabbi Akiva. And this is quite a deep philosophical or theological question. If God has created something in a certain way, who are we to make any difference? Who are we to make the change? God wants the poor, maybe he wants them to stay poor, says the Roman sage. Why are you getting involved in God's creation? This was the question that the Roman sage asked this great Talmud, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva answers him in his own parable. And he tells him, I'll tell you my own version of your parable. Let's say the king, let's use your same example. The king has imprisoned his son this time, not a slave. He has imprisoned his son. And he's ordered not to feed him or give him anything to drink. And someone went ahead and fed and gave something to drink to the king's son. At that point, would the king be upset at the person that fed and gave something to drink to his son? The answer came, and he says, no, well, if it's his son, he wouldn't be upset. Tells him Rabbi Akiva, well, we are all called the children of God. Yes, there is a idea that we are the servant of God, but we're also his children. And a king, knowing that someone will go to prison and help his son, that king will be very happy with this man. Now, what's the deep message behind this idea? Yeah, I mean, this anecdote is very clear, but the deep message is as follows. The question of this Roman sage is, why are we getting involved in God's creation? Who are you to change God's decree? Well, Rabbi Akiva's answer to that is because God empowered us to do so. Being his children, he empowered us to take part of his creation. God did not create a perfect world because God is not looking for perfection. God has created a world where Sheshet Yamim La'asot, God has created a world where man has to come into the world and has to perfect the world by his own deeds. By our own deeds, we take part, as Rabbi Sachs mentioned, we take part of God's creation, and we have the ability to make change. And not only we have the ability, God is giving us the opportunity to, by our charity or by our good deeds or any other mitzvot, to actually make a transformation in the world and turn the world into a better place. This is the idea here that Rabbi Akiva conveyed to this man. Yes, God has created certain things in a certain way, but he also gave us the ability to make a change and to make things for the better for people that are in great need. Tzedakah is such a wide mitzvah that it's simply called a mitzvah in the Talmud. It's such a, tzedakah is not only by giving money or giving any kind of goods. Tzedakah is by helping someone with knowledge. A tzedakah could be viewed also by giving someone good advice or leading someone in the right path or giving guidance to someone, as the Torah views that also part of a guidance. So I leave you with this, and I'm looking forward to hear Steve and his experience, and David, through his experience, to lens out each one of them in their own way were part of this creation, were part of making a change in the world. To you.
So we're going to start with our David Nathaniel, and I'd like to read his bio. He sends me something so short, and this is so typical of someone like him. So humble and just there to serve, and that's it, that's all. David Nathaniel, born, raised, and based in Montreal, is the CEO of the Ascot Capital Group that consists of a portfolio of lighting businesses and real estate assets. He's married to Carol Zilcha of Geneva, and they have 4 wonderful teenage children. David is the executive vice president and heads up the strategic planning committee at the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal. He's also the president of the community of Iraqi and Babylonian Jews of Montreal, is the incoming chair at Electro Federation Canada, an association that represents the electrical industry, and participates on the finance committee at St. George's School of Montreal. And we're so grateful that you're here with us with all the things you have on your hands, big family, and a company that has been named best managed company in Canada. So that is our David Nathaniel, and it's on to you.
Thank you, Sandra. That's very kind of you, very kind words. And thank you, Rabbi. I really enjoyed your presentation. So, well, Well, so Sandra asked me if I would participate many months ago. I said, oh, April's so far away, but April came faster than I imagined. And fortunately, I was a good boy and I prepared ahead of time. So, you know, I'll just give you my perspective on tzedakah. And I think first of all, for me, it starts with an appreciation of what we have and the gratitude for being in a position to be able to give. And I think, as the rabbi was saying, in my mind, tzedakah is not limited to financial support, but perhaps even more importantly is giving of your time and of your energy. And you know, we're all created equal, and so I firmly believe that we should treat people exactly the same way, and with the utmost respect and humility and humbleness and with kindness. And so I think also being kind to people and being humble is also, in my mind, part of tzedakah. So, you know, as a Jewish child, I was exposed to the notion. My first exposure would have been the you know, at Talmud Torah, where I went to school, and they used to pass around the JNF, the Karen Kayemet L'Israel, the JNF metal boxes. And, you know, as a kid, you put in a few coins. I just seem to remember that as I was preparing, somehow that entered into my mind, although, you know, it seems so insignificant, and I really didn't think about it forever since then, but it came back to me. And I think in my mind, in reality, that was probably the beginning of a foundation for me. And, you know, that was definitely reinforced over time at school. And, you know, when you go to synagogue on the weekdays, not that I go that often, but I've gone often enough to know that tzedakah, providing, you know, a few coins or bills into the box, is something that is a custom and a good custom. So as an adult, I'd say my first giving initiative was for a multi-year project at the JNF. Actually, I can thank Michael Gabay, who got a group of us together and had a representative from JNF come and speak to us. And I gladly got involved at that time. I don't know how old, I must have been in my early 20s. And actually, on a trip to Israel, they invited me to come and show me, you know, the project that I supported, and I got to see a plaque of my late father and of my family. And I remember getting a framed, kind of like a certificate, but a thank you from JNF. It was quite colorful, and it was framed. And I remember, you know, being so proud and you know, feeling that I've honored my parents, you know, in this endeavor. And so my wife, Carol, was brought up in a very similar way. And so at home, we definitely promote the importance of appreciating and helping others. And, you know, our children have been exposed to that from a young age at home and at school, very much at school. The school they go to, which is St. George's, is very much belief in this philosophy. And so the kids have participated and volunteered in many projects and initiatives. So in addition to financial support, Carol and I are very active in giving our time to volunteer on a significant number of boards and committees. Sandra was kind enough to mention the ones that I participate in. And so, you know, we live active lives. We have 4 teenage children, and before that, they were 4 younger children. You know, I run you know, a business. My wife has her work, but yet, even though we're busy, we're very happy to participate. And in reality, we get so much from doing this because we gain knowledge, we develop relationships, we see the fruits of our labor. And so that analogy, Sandra, that you brought up between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea is to me so meaningful. So, and in terms of my business, and so one thing we did earlier on, I don't know when, maybe 15 years ago or so, is actually my late sister Katie and I built corporate core values for our business, and we really wanted to instill our beliefs and our passion and extend that to our business, and so we did that, and those core values were introduced and really embraced by the organization, by our teams. And so one initiative we developed is called Donation Day, and now we actually changed the name to Katie's Donation Day in her honor. And what we do is we donate a percentage of our sales from that day, and it's widely promoted between our customers and our employees, and even some of the people who supply components and whatnot to us. And it's beautiful to see how they all get together with passion to support this initiative. And customers will hold their orders and try and place them on that day, and so on and so forth. And so it's been a very successful program, and we've been able to provide a significant amount each year to now over 50 charities and organizations across Canada. And we also support an organization called Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, yeah.
And this organization basically is, we provide financial assistance, and we have many of our employees participate every year. We typically participate in 3 home builds. So our employees, or some of our employees, will participate and actually help build the homes that eventually will house families that cannot afford to have their own home, and that have young children typically, and with their own home, they gain self-esteem, and they're more productive and more active in their communities. So and again, I would say that the benefits we get as a team is so significant. Giving, I feel that giving is way better than receiving. So for me, in conclusion, I'd say that Tzedakah is really part of the Jewish DNA, in which it instills what Hashem meant for his chosen people to live by. And I think it's a wonderful foundation for us to grow and lead by, and it influences our lives and everything we touch. So again, thank you, Sandra, for inviting me to participate, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on Tzedakah. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, our Vice President and one of our wonderful leaders. We have a wonderful leadership team at the Spanish, and you are certainly one of them. Thank you so much for that inspiring talk. Two things that you said I want to touch upon. One of them is you said it's not only monetary, you can give of your time. And this is what I've been trying to do. I'm not a philanthropist or anything like that. And I'm sure I would have wanted to do the things that your family does, and so many of our beautiful families, if I could. But I told myself at some point, the synagogue has given you so much. It's given you a second family, a place to belong. And you know, what can you do? So I give of my time, and it's one of my biggest honors that Rabbi Pinto asked me to help in this. He really touched in something that I can be useful at, and everyone wants to be needed. So thank you. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you talked about your sister. I'm almost in tears now, because this is one person that she was always so kind to me. I was raising two small kids, very, very tough divorce as a single mother. And, you know, I felt kind of judged unreasonably by people. But she always treated me with so much uplifting, and she, you know, it's just like what you said. It's you look at everybody, they're all equals, they're all in the image of God, and touch what's in them that's also in you, that little spark of God. So thank you, David, for being with us and sharing this beautiful speech. Our next panelist is somebody who's...
Sorry, Sandra, I just want to say one word.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much, David, for that beautiful, beautiful presentation. It really touched me very, very much, like everyone else. By the way, guys, Nathaniel in Hebrew means God give.
Oh, wow.
Nathan?
That's beautiful.
Nathaniel. It sums up exactly Daniel's speech and his gift to our community, and also his family spirit and tzedakah. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Edmond. And it is our dear, dear past president, Edmond Elbaz, who invited our next speaker to the Women's Learning Group, which I'm an active participant in. And we saw his speech. And when I thought, well, why should we leave David Nathaniel all by himself? All the other speakers have co-panelists. So then I thought of Steve Maman, whom Edmond introduced to us. And, you know, if you don't know who he is, then you're really out of the picture, because anyone who has a cell phone anywhere on the planet and can go on Google knows Steve Maman. So just to be very short, well, he has a beautiful bio here, which I'm going to read very quickly. Steve Maman, great-grandson of the Jewish mayor of Amismiz, Morocco, Hanania Etegdi, was born in Casablanca in 1973. His family immigrated to Canada that same year. His parents from Meknes and Casablanca raised him and his siblings in a traditional Moroccan home, instilling in them fundamental Moroccan values regarding family, culture, education, and civic duty. Today, Steve and his wife Muriel, who is of Marrakeshian descent, are the proud parents of 6 children between the ages of 7 and 28. And during this pandemic time, we're so grateful that both of you have given of your time to us. They too followed in their parents' footsteps and built a home where Moroccan culture and values are celebrated. Steve developed an expertise in vintage car collection management, acquisition, and brokerage. He founded the Prancing Horse dealership and is the curator of the Demers collection, which he built, comprised of 675 of the world's most coveted collector automobiles. Although Steve has not lived in Morocco, it remains a country sacred and beloved to him, a country he calls the Holy Land. The highly guarded Moroccan values of moderation, tolerance, and protection of minority rights are what gave Steve the needed foundation to do what was deemed impossible. In July 2015, inspired by the Right Honorable Stephen Harper, former Prime Minister of Canada, Steve launched a humanitarian mission that touched the lives of thousands in a very concrete way through the mission's groundwork and through its international media coverage. When Daesh took over Mosul city in Iraq in 2014, thousands of women and children were sold as sex slaves to soldiers and civilians in the newly founded caliphate. While the world sat silent, Steve took a stand for a minority whose rights were not only disregarded, but torn to shreds. Living by the words, "Act now or remain a spectator," Steve founded CYCI, the Liberation of Christian and Yazidi Children of Iraq. In less than a year, CYCI rescued 140 women and children from their captors, provided financially for 2,310 refugees safe passage from Greece to Germany, partnered with the Greek government to open the Petras camp, which looks after 1,000 Yazidis, assisted over 25,000 Yazidi Christian and Muslim families in Kurdish camps for refugees and displaced persons by distributing food, heaters, winter clothing, etc., as well as providing medical assistance. Throughout his mission, Steve made Morocco an integral part of CYCI's success, the country that taught him about acceptance and openness to all religions. Morocco contributed to CYCI through its principles, and these principles are what made Steve Maman the man he is today, earning him recognition as the Jewish Schindler. So without further ado, our dear second panelist, Steve, on to you.
Wow, okay. Thank you, Sandra. And first of all, I have to say, it's an honor for me to be part of this beautiful project. I never imagined I would have been chosen to speak in honor of Rabbi Sachs, something I never could have contemplated, and here I am today. I want to thank President Charles Shmee, Vice President David Nathaniel, Rabbi Pinto, Mr. Edmond Elbaz, for whom I hold a very special place in my heart, and he knows that. Heroic Sandra, who faced the tyranny of Iran for her father's sake. A book I always think about, a story that is unbelievable. And every time I meet somebody who's Persian, Iranian, I tell them there's Sandra Kuku. If you don't read her story, then you don't know what it is to rescue somebody you love from the clutches of evil. Gladys Moalem, who's most devoted person working for the Spanish and Portuguese, always there and never missing in action. God bless you. Hazan Ben Lolo, who I happen to love very, very, very much prior and more now after having witnessed what he does for the children within the congregation. Bravo, support him and give him all the help he needs. What he does is simply incredible, and nobody else does that at that level with so much love. And all others who were part of putting this event together in honor of Rabbi Sachs, a Gaon Hador, a leader in our generation. And most importantly, thank you to all of you here for being present this evening. The Chachamim teach us that God is mezaveg zivugim since he was done the creation of the world. Ask, what's he doing all this time? He's mezaveg zivugim. We relate to this concept of shidduchim by believing that it has to do with shidduchim of men and women for the purpose of getting to a chuppah of the mitzvah. But it's wrong. It's wrong because mezavek zivugim has to do with things that are much broader than that. The zivug encompasses everything that has to do with every action that you do that involves other people, even whose path you cross as you serve for their zivug. So everybody you meet, everybody that meets you, everybody that you deal with, everybody that is involved with you directly or indirectly is part of the plan of mezavek zivugim. Divine providence leads our lives. You may or may not accept it. The question of free will is often a question that we hear from people. Well, I have free will. I decide my own path. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says, everything is min hashamayim, even down to losing a button off your shirt. Nevertheless, divine providence defines our lives at every single moment, from the moment you were first born until the day you exit this world. So one must imagine that God has other things to do other than to have to set you up in certain scenarios of life, which you are presented with. The mitzvah that comes to you, for instance, the opportunity to give tzedakah, the opportunity to act, the actors involved are all part of the scheme that God put together just for you that day and at that specific moment. God will sometimes reveal this divine providence in stages, because if you reveal the project in its whole at the beginning, the mitzvah would seem too demanding, and one would simply retreat and walk away. So in some way, God tricks you to get you on board and slowly provides the tools, the means, all the way to the end of the mission. I'll give you a little example. I have somebody who knocks on my door before Shabbat, usually for tzedakah. Had he told me 25 years ago that he would be coming to me for the next 25 years, every Friday, to get that amount of money, I would have told him, listen, here's $100, for instance, or here's $200, or here's $300, and let's call it a day. I'll give you a big donation, but I can't commit to a relationship with you for the next 30 years. So obviously he comes in and he asks for $2, for $5. So you give it to him. He comes back the next week and the next week. And I said to myself last night, he's been coming for 25 years. And at the end of the day, God finds a way to unveil his plan slowly and surely, so you stay on board. So before I share with you my story, I want to recount a story that has deeply impacted my way of thinking and my actions. There was once a very successful businessman. He was very much in touch with his community, very much in touch. He knew the details of every single person in that little village, their aches, their joys. He was aware of everything. He was a successful man, so he would help them financially, and he knew exactly what they needed. After being, decades in the same town, an opportunity arose to go to a larger city, and he felt the need that he wanted to expand his business. So he left, and he moved to this faraway town. Years had passed, and he had lost connection with his community. His rabbi had not heard of him for years. So he sent his shamash to the city to meet the man. And upon his return, he questioned his shamash and wanted to know the details of what took place and how it took place. He said, I knocked at his door and somebody opened the door. He said, it wasn't him. They brought me in. They made me wait in a certain room. Then they asked me to move to another room. They went to get him. It took time for him to come down. When he came, he was very happy to see me, and we spoke about everything. And I left, and here I am. He said, the rabbi asked, He didn't open the door himself. He says, no, he had somebody greet me at the door and open the door and bring me in. And they brought me to one place and then moved me to another place. He says, wow, what a protocol. It wasn't like that when he used to live here. He said, I need to go and see him. So the rabbi traveled to see him. And obviously, when he got to the door, somebody opened the door. They brought him into a first place. He waited there, and then obviously the man found out that the rabbi had come to see him. He came rushing down the stairs. And when he got to the rabbi obviously they greeted each other. And the rabbi walked over to the window, and he pulled the curtain aside. And he looked outside while they were talking. He was just looking outside. And he told him, hey, who's that lady there pushing a carriage? So the man looks out the window and he says, Rabbi, I don't know. Oh, it's okay. A few moments later, he says, what about the person over there standing on the other sidewalk? He says, Rabbi, I don't know. And what about that person here? He says, Rabbi, I can't know everybody. It's a large town. Yes, it's a Jewish neighborhood, but it's a very large town, and there's no way I could know everybody. All right. The rabbi walks over to the mirror. There was a mirror on top of the mantle, and he knocks on the glass on the mirror. Then the rabbi walks back to the window, and he knocks on the window. And the man is wondering, is the rabbi looking at the quality of my windows and my mirrors to knock on them? What's he actually doing? And the rabbi told him, tell me, what is the window made of? So the man replied, sand, of course. He says, what about the mirror? As he walked back to the mirror and he knocks on the mirror again. He says, Rabbi, the same thing. It's glass. Started with sand. He says, okay. He says, now tell me, why, when I look through the glass, I could see outside, and when I look at that mirror, which is also made from sand, I see myself? And the man tells him, Rabbi, I understand. They put a silver lining behind that glass, and because of the silver lining, it reflects on myself. I can't see through the glass anymore because of the silver lining. I could only see myself. He told him, but ever since I got more successful, I give tzedakah. I'm busy, but I give more tzedakah. And the rabbi nodded his head and told him, the barrier that more money created in your case is that you don't know exactly the people's needs the way you used to when you had less righteous. He says that his whole life, from that moment on, every single mirror that he had, he used to turn it over, scratch the corner to take away the silver lining, and he would put it back as a reminder that the glass, the silver lining, makes you focus on yourself. It's easy to give money away. It's very easy. Easier than actions and giving of your own time. So Sandra, when you said that you're not a philanthropist, I'm sorry, you are the philanthropist. To give from your time is very difficult. To get involved into long-term missions is very difficult. More difficult than just pulling out a checkbook and giving money, even a lot of money. Even when it's a lot for you and you feel it, the giving of time is a tougher one. I can relate to this myself. Had I known that the mission of helping Yazidis and Christian victims of ISIS would take me away from my family, from my business, for years, from 2015, actually started in 2014, but from 2015 on, it was a full-time job until almost 2018, that I would have to sleep 3 hours a night, 4 hours, 5 hours, live in a state of stress, anxiety for years, having to face all the hardships that come with such a mitzvah of tzedakah. I can tell you that I would have walked away. And I never said this before. The first day I said this, I would have walked away from this had I known in advance all that it would entail. If God had presented to me this deal in its whole, I would have said, no, it's not for me. But he presented to me a first initial small mitzvah. I said, of course, at the early stages, to get a Yazidi back from Mosul, it was $200 to $500, depending on the age and etc. And I said, $200 to $500, are you kidding? Today, not tomorrow. I want you to act now. We're buying now. Now, forget the cars of Saddam Hussein that we're supposed to get me children out of that market today. But slowly, the price rose to $10,000 a head. But you were already there. God already brought you in. You're already attached to the mission. There was no going back. And obviously, who's going to say no to somebody's child for thousands of dollars? He delivered this stage and plans to get me involved until I felt like a Yazidi. I slept in refugee camps on the floor, just like the Yazidis. There was no kosher in Petra. In those refugee camps, I ate eggs, boiled eggs, and I ate bananas. That's all I ate. They tried to bribe me with everything. They didn't understand why I wouldn't eat. And I told them, it's kosher, you're Yazidi, it's complicated. We'll talk about this another day. Said, right now, all I found are bananas and keep boiling the eggs. And that's what it is for now. I put together a team and we set out to rescue these Yazidi women and children from the ISIS territory, and we succeeded. We set out to assist Yazidis and Christians in Kurdistan and help them in Greece, and we also succeeded. A total of 25,000 people witnessed a group of Jews rushing to their rescue, followed by filmmakers, news reporters, and tens of millions of people and supporters around the globe. Never did I think that our initial mitzvah of wanting justice for the victims of ISIS by assisting them with tzedakah would bring us this far. You couldn't plan this. It was God's will, and we were chosen to do this task. The mitzvah of tzedakah can take you to places and levels that not many mitzvot can. You can simultaneously achieve a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem and of Tikkun Olam when you set out to make this mitzvah with determination. God has other things to do. If he sent it your way, it is for you to see the justice that you will bring down by correcting a difficult situation for someone else in need, a community in need. You're fixing a wrong when you give tzedakah. Yes, it's a wrong. A poor man sees it as a wrong. He lives it as an injustice. He suffers. He can't make ends meet at the end of the month. It's difficult for him to pay and to assume all these expenses in his life. He sees an injustice and he lives at it as an injustice. He may accept it as God's will, but it's an injustice. It's difficult on him. So when you help that person out, you're fixing an injustice. Tzedakah repairs the injustice for the party who receives this mitzvah. They endure some sort of injustice, okay? Jewish or not, to me, it makes no difference. Yes, there are priorities, and I heard a lot of complaints about that. It doesn't mean that if you're helping non-Jews, you stop to help Jews. You can do both at the same time. And God bless our community. There are enough people doing what is necessary for us to maintain what we have in place. You could take a little bit of time and help others that are in need and not have to close the door on them. I see the value of Tikkun Olam and Kiddush Hashem as very, very valuable. Jews brought the conscience to this world. We are hated for it. Very much so, because the conscience of justice and tzedakah sets us apart from the other nations. We are admired for it. And one can only understand that we are so attached to this mitzvah because it is an appointment with God every time it happens. A personal one-on-one with the Almighty that caters to the needs of other people by being mezaveg zivugim and adding more success to you, to one of the people, so you could turn a corner and meet the person who God entrusted you with his share, so you could deliver to him this money that you were entrusted with. This is the zivug. The receptacle in the other person wasn't ready or wasn't proper for him to receive what he was lacking. So God entrusts you with the additional amount. So when you turn that street corner, you could deliver. You're only a delivery man for the extra that you have. This tzedakah was never yours to begin with. I admire your congregation, the truth. I'm part of a beautiful congregation. Or Chaim, Edmond Elbaz knows this very well. Your congregation gave me a special platform. I had many platforms, God bless, all over the world, but and Navi Beiro. Nobody's a Navi in his own town. It was difficult for my own congregation to open the doors. Actually, the doors were quite shut tight. And it was difficult for them to understand that a group of Jews from the synagogue itself, not myself or the other people involved, were on the page of every single newspaper all the way to Hong Kong in languages that I couldn't even tell you what they wrote about me. I would get screenshots of things from all over the world and I would say, is it good or not good? Can't read what's there. And yet, the people next to you in your own shul have a hard time. And Navi Beiro, it's a true saying. Edmond Elbaz fixed the wrong for me, but for everybody involved in this mitzvah. And this is why he holds a very special place in my heart. And I'm eternally grateful to your congregation, to him, and to the people involved that had taken the decision to let it out. It healed a part in me where my own community obviously opened the door to what we were doing, and it was important. God bless all of you with health, wealth, success, with be protected from this magefa, from COVID-19. I wish the best upon you, and whatever your congregation needs at any given time, I'm here to help with open arms. Thank you for having me.
God bless you and all the people who work with you. On to you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Steve. We have a few questions. You can write your questions, or if you want to ask the question directly, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. What would you tell young people to motivate them to giving in any kind of way, whether it's time or money or whatever it is? Where to start? Where's a good place to start?
The mitzvah finds you. You don't find the mitzvah. When Hashem needs you for something that you need to do, he finds the proper person. It comes to you. What my advice is, do not, lift up the rug and just broom underneath whatever is presented. Always consider that God took from his precious time to send you an opportunity. And it comes from God, doesn't come from anybody else. And if he took from his precious time to send you something, then it's worthy of investigating. This is my advice to people on Hashem sends you according to your capacity, to your ability to act. He'll never send you something that you can't handle. He'll send you exactly what it is that you could succeed with.
Thank you. David, there's a question for you also. Was there a turning point in your life that made you recalculate your involvement in tzedakah or volunteering and so forth?
I don't know if there was a turning point. I think it was just sort of a natural evolution. I think as you move forward in your life and you accomplish things, you become you become better known within your community. If I take as an example the Electrical Association in Canada, you know, they noticed that I was successful. Started as a very small business and grew. I was an outsider, and then at some point, the president of the association asked me if I'd like to become a member of the board, and that was potentially a turning point for me in really understanding my ability to participate, to help the specific group, and the pleasure that it brought me, and also I say it also honed my leadership abilities, because I was no longer the boss in my company. I was now just a member of a board of many other people in our industry. And so I've encouraged and I continue to encourage many of our employees to participate, and many of them do. And I think it builds leadership. And so, from one thing to the next, and once you realize your capabilities, then there's always something, as Steve said, that's going to present itself, and you kind of, it's just a like a magnetic type situation that draws you, and obviously all orchestrated, by God. So I guess that would be my perspective.
Great, thank you, Steve. I see that you're answering some of the questions. Mr. Khadid, I can't tell which Khadid it is, but you raised your hand. You have a question?
Yeah, it's Charlie Hadid. I wanted to ask both David and Mr. Maman, touching on the comments you just said about giving time in the community and whatnot, and also Steve touched on a shutdown or a shutting of the doors in the community. So my question is, do you find today, I find in the community that everybody's looking out for themselves more than looking out for everybody as a whole? Yes, there are some exceptions of people that want to help the community move forward, but at the end of the day, everybody seems to be looking for their own recognition, like having their name or a plaque or whatever on the side of a building, or like as if it should be plastered across the world, and not realizing that there's a bigger picture. So what are your thoughts on specifically the Jewish community in Montreal more than anywhere else in the world that I see today?
Well, here's a little story. St. George's, which I'm involved with, hired a fundraising consultancy group based out of Vancouver, and that consultant was interviewing different people, and I somehow got on the list, and the lady was asking me, I guess she was probing to see if I would get involved, whatnot. Anyway, somehow the subject came up of naming rights, and she said, naming rights are, would be part of the whole thing. And I said, to be honest, I'm not really interested in like having my name, on a plaque or anything like that. And she explained to me the importance of that. And she put it in a very empathetic way, like this is not about you being sort of having a big ego, but it's about recognizing what you did for future generations, and to know that there were people there that provided support. So I think I think a lot of people are generous and give financially, give of their time. I think recognition I don't think there's anything wrong with recognition. You know, and from what I've seen, at least in our community, the Spanish and Portuguese, you know, I'm seeing that, you know, a good part of our congregation, you know, are generous, are, you know, are empathetic and care about the future of our synagogue and the well-being of our synagogue. So, you know, that's my perspective.
If I may just piggyback on your reply, David, you know, it's nice to see a long list, you know, when they put out a list of names who helped, because that, how else will younger or older people know the impact? There's a good side to that. I mean, you shouldn't always look at it as a negative, but I really think that if we have our heart in getting on with the task and not thinking of anything that comes back to you, much more gets done, and in the end God is going to recognize you, and that's the most important part. So Steve, how about you? What are you gonna share with us on that?
I disagree. I disagree, and I believe that we have some superheroes in this community. And let's speak about Les Anges d'Esther, Esther Levy, who out of Côte Saint-Luc, I don't know if some of you follow her on Facebook. I'm in awe at what she's doing, at how much she is doing. I mean, this is beyond giving, it's beyond sharing, it's beyond giving of your time, this is sacrifice. You should look her up, Les Anges d'Esther, Esther Levy. I mean, a superhero in our town right now. I think the person that is most impressive right now. There's a community needs big people with plaques, with yes, you see it as not unappealing maybe, but I see it as building a community with all the proper tools. There are those people that need those plaques, and those plaques usually come with big commitments, long-term commitments, and they're owed that respect. The Torah teaches us, I mean, if you're wealthy, don't pretend to be not wealthy. If you're wealthy, live with your kavod, with your wealth, and properly. Don't pretend. And it always comes back to this. When somebody tells you, how are you doing? How's your business? You know, it's difficult, you know, scared of the ayin hara. It's hard, you know, it's difficult, but he's doing great. And on the other hand, the other one says, yeah, Baruch Hashem, I'm doing amazing. So, you know, Rabbi tells you, if you answer with a, you know, lowering your eyes, I don't know, it's a bit difficult lately. Well, it's not. God is going to teach you what it is to really live it this way. And you don't need to go there. So these people that are going out and putting their names on buildings, God bless them. They do things that I can do, to levels that I can do. And I don't envy it, but it's necessary. Buildings need names on them. Why not have their names if they're going to be giving above others? And it's all for the good of community building. We have to look at it with a positive eye, and we have to look at the good in everything. This is where the work is truly required within us. How do we perceive what is happening? I'm not saying, Mr. Hadi, that you're not perceiving it properly. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's the perception, the greater good. Let's use these words, for the greater good. He has a plaque on the building. God bless. I found out that in Toronto, one of the families from Kila Center donated $25 million to a certain hospital, and their hospital wears their name now. And I said, oh, wow, what a beautiful donation from a Sephardic Jew to have given $25 million to a hospital. God bless him. Let him put his name all over the hospital. He should have his name there. So it's positive because it's helping our community, and that's how we have to look at it.
I just want to intervene, just from a rabbinical standpoint and from halacha. It says clearly in the Talmud and in the Shulchan Aruch that mitzvah lefarsem oseh mitzvot. It's a mitzvah to publicize those that do good deeds, those that do good things, to the point that it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch of the Bet Yosef. So the whole idea of putting a plaque is something that we're not doing it necessarily, whether the people, whatever the person's intentions are there. And there's a very famous anecdote of a very wealthy man that came to see the rabbi, and he told the rabbi, look, I have a problem giving I'm starting to have a problem to give donations, because every time I give, I feel very great about myself, and I feel that I'm getting a little bit arrogant by giving the donation. And the rabbi asked him, well, with your donation, were there people that were able to eat, or there are people that are able to do good things with your donation? So he says, yes. He says, so it doesn't matter how you feel. As long as the job gets done, as long as the person that needs to eat has bread on his table, whatever it is. So sometimes even if the motivation is not 100% pure, at least as the good deed, it's still performed, and that's a mitzvah to perform. So I just wanted to throw that out there, just to answer Khadid. So we have one last question. So far, maybe I'll take one last question here. I'm not sure if somebody wants to correct me. I'm not sure I'm understanding this question correctly. Do you find that there is an illogical element in giving tzedakah? Giving something that you have worked for very hard, and you're supposed to kind of give up something that you've earned yourself, whether it's money or time. There's also what does it say? There's also somewhere where it says in the Talmud, if you have financial problems, the good remedy for that is to give tzedakah. Does that sound illogical to you? David, I'll let you try to.
Why do I have to go first all the time? No, I actually think it's very logical. So,
okay.
They say, in terms of just time, forget about money, but they say if you want to get something done, ask somebody who's very busy. Mm-hmm. So, that's pretty common. And I mean, just that analogy of the Sea of Galilee versus the Dead Sea. I mean, if you're blessed with the ability to help and to be kind and to teach and to lead, then God gave you that, and you should utilize it to the greatest potential possible.
Steve, you want to take that on, Steve?
Yes. Human nature usually doesn't share, doesn't give, envies, is jealous. These are evil traits, but they are the traits of all generations. We Jews know what we've gone through for thousands of years, and all these evil traits are part of the norm. So you break a klipa, you break the proper word for in klipa in English,
the outer shell.
You break the outer shell when you come out of the nature and do something that is against you. You worked for every dollar you made, but you have to give some of it to somebody that you don't know or that you know. It's a difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to achieve. And sorry if I'm going to just extend into something, and I want to bring it up. I remember walking out of the Cavendish Mall when I was a child with friends of mine. We were always a group of 2-3 friends, always together. And we walked by a beautiful car. It was a Porsche that was sitting downstairs at the Cavendish Club. And a friend of mine told me, you know, Steve, the day that and we were maybe, I don't know, 12 years old, 11 years old. He said, the day I'm going to be a millionaire, I will buy you this car because I know you love it. And I said, Sam, that's so kind of you. I said, and which car would you want me to buy you if one day I became a millionaire? So he said, oh, I want the red Ferrari that we see parked at the Cavendish Club sometimes. We used to go into the Cavendish Club to look at all the beautiful cars in the garage. And I said, well, if one day I'm a millionaire, I'll buy you that Ferrari. And no problem. It was a 308 GTS. It was red. And fast forward 30 years. I'm in Acapulco sitting at the pool with my family. And God bless, I had done a deal in Dubai on something. It was very successful. And I was sitting at the pool telling myself, what a beautiful thing. Here I am in Acapulco. I closed this deal in Dubai. Life is beautiful. And I had a little flash of Sam and I walking outside of the Cavendish Mall, and this promise and the promise he made and I made. I said to myself, why is it that when we're children, we're able to promise these things and we mean it? I'll buy you that Ferrari. Of course I will, because I'll never be a millionaire. So I'll buy you the Ferrari for sure if I'm a millionaire. It's nothing. And how come as we grow older, if you ask me today to buy a Ferrari, I'm sorry, it ain't happening. I mean, you got to be crazy to buy your friend a Ferrari because nobody does that. So obviously, why? I ask myself, why is it that when you're young and you're a child, you're able to do these things, and when you grow older, you can't? Because obviously, the traits come out. You want to retain, you want to keep, you want to get keep as much for you, and obviously, it's innate human nature. And listen to this. I come back from Acapulco. My phone rings. I speak to Sam, I don't know, once every year and a half. Once in a while, we call each other. We're great friends until today. I come back a week later, the phone rings. I said, wow, Sam calls me now? I pick up the phone. I said, I'm so happy to talk to you. And he said, I don't know why you're calling me. I said, but whatever it is that you called me for, it's yes. He tells me, so he says, but you don't know why I called you. So why do you say yes? I said, listen, Sam, I was at the pool. I had a flash of our discussion when we were a kid walking, by the Cavendish. We always used to point at cars and we would buy it. I said, today, God bless, I could say that I'm able to do it, but I won't. But because we were unconscious when we made those promises. I said, but I don't know what you're calling me. I said, but whatever it is that you're calling me, if it's something that you need from me, you have it. He says, I feel very, very, very uncomfortable telling you that I lost my job. It's been months. I have to get to work. I have to find a job. I don't know what to do. I don't know nothing of the cars and what you do. I said, but can you help? I said, you start tomorrow morning at 9. Sam stayed with me. He stayed with me for 2 years. It was in 2009. He didn't know what to do. I just said, you know what? Your job is here. You pick up the phone when somebody calls and you talk to them, and that's it. And he said, tell me, see, there's nothing here for me. I'm going to go find it. I said, your job is here. It's nowhere else. So human nature, again, I wanted to break it inside myself that day. I said, I was able to do when I was a child. I don't know why he's calling, but I'm going to do it now. And you see, that's what it is. So the answer is yes. I mean, that's the answer. You have to break the nature of things. It goes against the nature. And that's the beautiful thing about tzedakah, is because you give from something. Dam, it's dam. I mean, kesef is dam. It's blood. Who gives their own blood like that everywhere? No. Jews have this capacity. They have this beautiful, beautiful trait that nobody else in the world has. We're exclusive in this manner. We can give and give and give, help and help and help, and it's within us, and that's why we're still here today to where we are as a people.
Amy, please, you have a question? Go right ahead.
I have a question for you, Rabbi.
Okay.
We all volunteer and we give tzedakah. This is our nature, I think. But I come from Iraq, and my father was a very big donor in the sense he used to help the poor. He used to help giving dowry to women, because in those days you can't get married if you don't have money. He used to make sure he gives. He goes and asks other people to give money so that this woman can get married. And everything he did, nobody even knew about it. Not me. I was at the time a young teenager. My mother didn't know anything about it. And then with all what happened in Iraq, my father was killed. And I had a big problem with tzedakah after that. How can somebody who can be such a tzaddik and nobody knew what he was doing? The only reason we knew on his shiva, women, old women, poor women, they came to my mother and they were kissing her feet. They were telling her my father was giving them a salary, and my mother had no clue. So he was to me a tzaddik. Why take him away, especially in that fashion, to be killed by these animals in Iraq? You try to explain this to me and convince me that I still should believe in tzedakah.
Wow, that's a.
I don't think you knew that story, because I
first
don't
of
talk
all,
about it.
Amy, you never shared that story.
No,
with me.
because
I didn't
it's
know that.
too painful. I
Wow.
can't.
Wow.
Like now
So-
I'm shaking, even talking about it.
Wow.
I'm shaking. It's not an easy thing for me because I was a young girl, and it really left a big impact on me during my life, you know? But really, I have a problem with this. Why take somebody in such a fashion with torture?
Wow.
It's very hard to accept. Like, really, where is God? I mean, he did everything that a tzaddik is supposed to do. You tell me, you are a rabbi.
Wow, that's first of all, it's quite a loaded question. First of all, I'm really sorry to hear that. I never heard this part of your life, this story. You know, if I would try to answer such a question, I would try to pretend that I'm God and understand exactly what the way God judges people and the way God has his own system of judging. Nobody understands exactly. You know, this kind of question was asked for thousands of years. You know, so much books were written about it. Why does bad things happen to good people? The whole idea of one of the questions, the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud speaks about that. One of the things that were not even revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Talmud and Tractate Berachot says that one of the questions that was asked is that how is it tzaddik? There's a whole idea of someone that is a righteous, and when good things happen to him, we understand. When bad things happen to the wicked, we understand. But when bad things happen to the tzaddik, and good things happen to the wicked, that we don't understand, the middle ground. And those are questions that you know, many rabbis, even at the time of the Talmud, tried to answer, but at the end, Rabbi Elazar, I recall clearly, says this answer nobody really could understand. Nobody can really answer. Why is it that the wicked prosper, and why is it that the pious could be punished? It's something that is in the hands of God. We don't understand always why is it exactly that God punishes or God gives reward to other people. So I can't really answer that question on that fact, but what I could say is that, understanding the ways of God is way beyond our understanding. It could be that through your father's accomplishment in his life, he was able to help a lot of people that in his life. And sometimes people accomplish their mission in life, as painful as it sounds, especially when you're speaking about your father. People accomplish what they were created for, or their mission in life, and they're taking away from us at a time where we don't really understand why. That's the only real answer I could give you. But your father, as you mentioned during the Shiva, as much as you struggled, of course, as his daughter being there during the Shiva, many people viewed him as leaving a blessing behind him, right? Like, as you mentioned, so many women came up and they were kissing your mother and thanking her for everything. So all of the great things that he did, at the same time, he left a great blessing for people to remember him by. Yeah.
But I don't have him. I was deprived.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yes, David, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. So Amy, I'm really sorry, and then to lose your father in such a terrible way, and clearly the pain is still there after all these years. I would just say, specific to your question, I don't think that tzedakah is a means to an end. I don't think you give tzedakah to get something. You give tzedakah because you want to give. And if things come to you, then if things come to you, then things come to you. But you shouldn't expect them to come to you. And I think your father obviously had a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul, and I think, when his life ended, at least he had that to take with him and to be part of him, is that he did good in his time on earth. And I think that's something to be proud of. So that's my perspective.
Thank you,
That's
Dave.
so beautiful.
Thank you.
Lizette had a question. Go ahead, Lizette.
I wanted to thank David. Really, it's a beautiful answer, because what Amy went through was horrendous, and she was only 14 years old. And for anybody who was unfortunately in Baghdad at that time, we all went through a horrendous time. But yes, I think the way you describe it is the best way to say it, that this is what he took with him. This is what he took with him, and this is what is the most meaningful thing. And it stays with Amy. I mean, it stays with Amy and her family, that he did so much good, and God bless his soul. And we pray that his soul gets, helped in the other world. I don't know what else, but you put it beautifully. Thank you, David.
Rabbi Friedman, he says, we had a miserable life for thousands of years, miserable existence for thousands of years, but we had an amazing life, because all the empires, they just wanted to expand their existence. They're not there anymore. We are. We had a miserable existence, but we had an amazing life.
Yeah.
Because Amy, you're still here and you're still giving of yourself to all of us.
I heard Amy's story, and I just wanted to share with you. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry also, like everybody else is saying, that this happened to your father. And just one thing that came to mind is, if you save one life, you save the world entire. So I'm sure your father saved so many lives, or helped so many lives in his lifetime, that you have to think about that as being something that is no money can put an amount to that. So
Yeah.
I think that I'm sure that he saved so many lives with his generosity, with his righteousness, that you should feel comfortable knowing that Yehi Zichro Baruch, that his memory is a blessing to all that knew him and everybody that knew him. And today, as you speak of him, people are reminded again of the importance of tzedakah and the importance of giving and helping other people. God bless you.
Chazaku Baruch. Thank you. If our president, Charles Shemi, could say closing words and we could wrap it up.
Hi, everyone. And just to close off, I just want to say this was a really beautiful presentation and really very inspiring and really interesting. Steve, I'm really glad to have met you. It's the first time. And your story is an amazing story. And I consider you my hero. David, I've known you for most of my life and I communicate with you almost on a daily basis, but I'm still learning new things about you. So also your story was really very inspiring. Thank you very much for both of you for for giving us a talk. Sandra and Rabbi Pinto, it was a great organization and it was really well done. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gladys, for always helping out. And great. So looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
have a
Thank you,
great
Sandra.
president, Charles.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, everybody. Salut, mon frère Steve.
Salut.
Ça va,
J'ai
mon
parlé
beau?
de toi.
Daniel,
Ah oui?
thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Pinto, as well.
Shabbat shalom to all.
Shabbat shalom to everybody.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.